Hello. In this video, I'll show you how to customize shortcuts and preferences for the BCM Radial Slider. Start by opening the Shortcuts Customize UI from the BCM menu. Here, you can change the shortcuts that trigger the alpha radial sliders. Click on the first field, then press the key on your keyboard you want to assign as the new shortcut. I'm choosing J, then pressing the Save button to apply the changes. Now, if I press and hold the J key, the radial sliders will appear. Let's switch the current alpha to 1 with more properties so we can better see how the sliders behave. Now, when I press J, I can adjust the properties of that alpha. Important: these shortcuts do not interfere with Substance Painter's native shortcuts. The radial sliders are only triggered if you press and hold the key longer. If you tap the key quickly, you'll activate the original Painter shortcut instead. Pressing 1 lets me change the invert property of the alpha. I'll now reset the shortcut back to grave accent. In this section, you can also customize the shortcuts that toggle the behavior of the radial sliders, but these only work while the sliders are already visible. You can assign shortcuts for the color sliders and the brush sliders as well. By default, the radial sliders come with shortcuts that work for the English keyboard layout. If you use a different layout, some shortcuts might not function correctly. For example, the grave accent key is not in the same place on a French keyboard. If I switch to French, the key no longer works because it now represents another character. But I can simply change the shortcut, press Save, and it works again. Switching back to English, I'll set it again to grave accent. You can also remove a shortcut by selecting it and pressing the minus button. If you're using an alpha with many properties, like the tile generator, one shortcut may not be enough to display them all. That's why the tool supports multiple shortcuts for one alpha. To make things easier, these use the numeric row on your keyboard. The idea is similar to other shortcut mappings. Each shortcut represents a row or section of the keyboard. Quick key shortcuts work like regular shortcuts. They override Painter's native shortcuts. For instance, the invert color shortcut is mapped to X. This extends the default Painter behavior by allowing you to invert the base color of a fill layer or a paintbrush, even outside of mask mode. You can change this shortcut too. You can also change the toggle between mask and content shortcut, in case you want a different key to switch between these modes. The hide special function uses a regular shortcut. For example, you can assign Alt+L. I'll reset it now. In addition to shortcuts, you can customize the arrangement of properties displayed in the radial sliders. By default, the order follows the Properties panel, from top to bottom. Let's first change the alpha to barcode. I'll activate the alpha layout by pressing the grave accent key. Then go to the BCM menu and select Preferences. In this window, I've selected the barcode preferred layouts. Since I already had preferences set, it's split into two layouts, one activated by grave accent, and another by 1. If I press the grave accent, the radial sliders show the same layout as displayed in the UI. Let me change the position of height. I click on the height button, select the zone, then scroll the mouse wheel to adjust its position. I'll press save, and now when I trigger the layout with grave accent, height is in the 4th position. Let's change the property from height to invert. Press save again, and now invert is displayed in the layout. I'll switch it back to height. For the alternative button, I had none, which means no property was used in that slot. If I change it to double quotes, it means any property not explicitly set will be placed there. After saving, you'll see that invert, which wasn't assigned, is now visible in that spot. If I set both the main and alternative buttons to none, that direction disappears from the layout. If I press 1 to trigger the second layout, I see the remaining properties, height and invert. These are all the shortcuts available for this alpha. If I set the alternative to none, now layout 2 has room for only one property, invert. In the UI panel, the shortcut 2 becomes available. If I press it, even without a predefined layout, the radial slider still displays a layout with the height property. In global settings, you can change how the radial sliders behave. For example, one direction mode means a property will only appear in one direction. To adjust it, move your mouse in that direction until it passes the second radial line, then the value will change. Currently, the layout has only 3 properties shown because one direction is set to none. If I set it back to height, all 4 directions become active again. You can also increase the number of maximum directions. Now I have 5 directions, with one set to none. Let's switch back to 2 directions. Now it's a bit cluttered, so I'll go back to 4. Alternative zones can be swapped independently. You can also delete a layout, but make sure you have a button selected in the layout before doing that. Now the second layout is listing the remaining invert property. Let's test a more complex alpha, like tile generator, which has a lot of properties. First, I press grave accent to show its properties. Another way to open the Preferences Customize UI is to tap the down arrow while the radial sliders are active. Let's change some properties. When you select a property from the list, if that property already exists in the UI, it will be replaced by double quotes, and the new one will only be set in the spot you have chosen. Let's see how it works. Now I can change Y amount, X amount, or the position random from the first shortcut. You'll see I have up to 7 available. If I delete this customized arrangement, the radial sliders will return to the default layout. Opening Preferences Customize UI again, I now see the default layout, ready for further changes.